Hi again, everyone. Thank you again for coming in here for another video at Mad About Madeira. Well, today I want to talk about something that's a little bit different. I've touched on it before in a few of my videos, my earlier videos, and I want to bring it back up again because, well, just because, okay? Um, if you look at the videos today dealing with Portugal and Madeira, I would say eight out of every 10 videos will show you um, some romanticized, idyllic, glossy videos about Portugal and Madeira. I'm not saying that they're wrong. There are beautiful places in both places, Madeira, mainland, Madeira and mainland Portugal. There are beautiful places. Watching the videos just draws you in, like this is the place you need to be. And depending on your personality, for a lot of people, they will probably thrive in a place like Portugal or Madeira, which is what we're expecting to do also, depending on your personality. Obviously, if you're leaving New York and you want to be partying every night and hanging out, big city lights and everything, Madeira is not going to necessarily be Madeira or mainland Portugal is not going to necessarily be the place for you. Not to say that Lisbon doesn't have a very, very vibrant nightlife, especially on Saturday nights and Friday nights, at least from what I saw when I was there. Okay? So you can enjoy yourself. But most of the times when you watch these videos, I'm not saying that the videos are telling you to think this, but I guess it can give you the impression that once you come to Portugal or Madeira, all your problems disappear, life is great, everything is fantastic, just come over here, and when you come over here, all your problems will just roll off your back and whatever. Well, we all know that's not necessarily true, because you go to Portugal, they have their own share of problems. You go to Madeira, it has its own share of problems that you're going to have to contend with and you're going to have to deal with. You're going to have to leave some things behind in the United States or wherever you're coming from that may have been of a convenience to you where you're coming from, and you might go over to Madeira or Portugal and those conveniences may not necessarily be there. And for some people that may be frustrating and may be a deal breaker, and it's like, oh, I thought they were going to have this, I thought we'd be able to order something from Amazon or show up at my door tomorrow, things like that. Okay? But what I want to talk about today, it's something else a little different. Now, I may be coming from a different angle with this because I look at myself as being a person who's connected to the country, and my reasons for wanting to go to live there, it's not so much, it intersects with other people's reasons. I want to get away from the craziness. I want to get away from the madness. I want to get away from the rat race. I want to get away from the consumerism, the individualism, the crazy mindset of Americans, the gun culture, the crazy prices for healthcare and schooling and everything that goes on over here. I want to get away from all of that too. So it intersects there. But there's another reason why I want to live there, and that is because over the years, as you've been watching these videos, I shouldn't say over the years, but as you've been watching these videos, you'll know over the years, I've come to learn more and more about my Madeiran heritage. And this is something I did not know, but once I started finding it out, I wasn't like, oh, Portugal is this hot spot. Wow, I'm tied to this country. I want to go there. I think I explained it in another video. It was kind of like the other way around. I was busy minding my business, not knowing anything about Portugal trending, not knowing all the hype that was going on with it. I'm looking at this country, and it's not a country that jumped out on my radar because up until that point, I was thinking that everyone wanted to go to Paris, everyone wanted to go to Barcelona, everyone wanted to go to London, everyone wanted to go to Germany. Portugal was not exactly the place on anyone's radar. I was not even aware of all the hype that was going on at the time. So what I was looking at, my wife and I were just going there because we just were like, hey, our family, as far as we know, came from this place. Let's go check it out. It's only after we came back, I started realizing like, wow, I didn't know that this place was so trending, I did not know any of this. But prior to me knowing all of that, it was like, wow, this is a place I would like to live. I just love the pace of life. I just love just looking around. I just felt like it's a place I belonged in, okay? Now, of course, I belong in the Virgin Islands, where I'm from, which is what I'm going to talk about in a minute. I could go to St. Kitts and Nevis, where I was raised. I can go to Guyana, where my wife is from, and I will probably feel just as at home. But those places, as you've heard me say, also have certain issues I don't feel like dealing with at this moment. Madeira doesn't have those kind of issues, even though some of the issues do overlap, like the bureaucracy and the long waits and so forth. But in Madeira, there's some things that are improved upon compared to what we have in the Virgin Islands, Guyana, St. Kitts and Nevis. And I would prefer to be in Madeira because they wouldn't be struggling with those type of things. But anyway, I mentioned that I want to talk about the Virgin Islands because there's a connection to something that's going on here in Portugal right now that, as the title basically says, that I think Portugal can look at and see what's going on, or people can or this might be able to help you to understand more of why people in Portugal may feel a particular way. And when I say people, I'm talking about the local people who are there, people that you meet when you go there. Now, while these videos are going on and people are coming into Portugal, into Madeira from other parts of the world, including Americans, the numbers are increasing, and going into the country. A lot of times what tends to happen are the local people being lost in the process. Sometimes this can eventually, over time, become something that could become, full of tension. Prime example, in the U.S. Virgin Islands. Now, I did another video earlier, another take on this video, but a call came in and broke up the entire thing. And I don't feel like going back over explaining the whole history of the Virgin Islands again. So let me just try to see if I can just bring it forward. In the U.S. Virgin Islands. Now, before they became the U.S. Virgin Islands in 1917, they were known as the Danish West Indies. And the reason why they were known as the Danish West Indies was because these islands were under the Danish flag. The Danes were the ones that colonized these islands, post Amerindian people, the original people there. Now, these three islands, the three major islands in the U.S. Virgin Islands today, that were the Danish West Indies back then, up until 1917, were St. Croix, St. John, and St. Thomas, which is where I am from. St. John and St. Thomas were basically colonized by the Danes, like relatively close to one another. St. Croix was an island that was actually under French control, and you can still hear it in the name of the island, St. Croix, before the Danes received the island from the French, okay, in 1733. Now, when the islands became the U.S. Virgin Islands, eventually around the 1950s, after World War II, the islands became very, very, very popular with Americans. As time went on, became even more popular because of the Cuban Revolution. When the Cuban Revolution took place, a lot of Americans who used to go to Cuba started looking for another place in the Caribbean, something similar, with a similar feel that they could go to and enjoy what they used to enjoy in Cuba after Cuba shut down because of the revolution there. So, here enter the Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico. They're U.S. territories. They're under the U.S. flag. It's not like Cuba, where they're shut down and Americans are not allowed to go there. These were places that Americans could freely go. Didn't have to worry about a passport or anything. Jump on a plane, jump on a boat, just get off and just walk on land and enjoy yourself because you're an American on American soil or American territories. So a lot of people started coming in. So the tourism industry began to boom on these islands, especially St. Thomas. So all of a sudden, overnight, you have tourists flooding the island. And now to support that new industry, that burgeoning industry, the U.S. Virgin Islands put out a call to people from the other Caribbean islands nearby, down the islands, St. Kitts, Nevis, Anguilla, Antigua, and said, hey, come on over here and work for us. Come on in, please, come on in. We need people, we need housekeeping people at the hotels. We need people, we need maintenance guys at these new hotels we're building. We need all these type of people who are coming in. So you had all these people coming in, and as they came in, it started to eventually put a strain on the limited system that they had there, the electrical grid. Now you have people coming in, and you have a few schools on the island, and now these people are coming in with their children, and now, if you had a school that could take maybe 100 students total, or 150 students total, now all of a sudden it's 1,000 students. Where are we going to put them? So a big strain fell upon the islands. Well, another thing that basically happened is a lot of Americans started coming in. And not all of them were coming in with the best of mindsets, because at the same time, America was still going through racism and segregation. So you have a lot of people coming from the United States who come from an area, especially a lot of white people who come from an area in the United States where segregation is still rife, where racism is still an accepted way of life for them. And they come over to these islands, and the islands are predominantly people of African descent living there. So tension eventually began to build, because some of these Americans brought this attitude with them. Hey, black folks, we're superior to them. Let's bring our racism with us, and let's go ahead and treat them like that in their own country. Let's treat them like we're better than them. We're more superior than them. Let's go ahead and build communities and gate it off, and let's build houses on the beach and tell them they cannot come on these beaches that they've been coming on for hundreds of years. They can't come over here. They can't do this. So it started to create a certain amount of tension. So you could see where this is going now. Now, fast forward into even more modern times. St. John, the smallest of the three major U.S. Virgin Islands, started to see an influx of a lot of people from the United States coming down. Now, it was a particular crowd of people, and I'm not saying that everyone within this crowd or every person coming from the United States who were white were more or less coming in to create any problems for anybody there. But what was going on? Sometimes just being tone deaf, or not paying attention, or not being aware, not having any self-awareness. Coming in, and the next thing you know, they're building this, they're building that. They have their bars, they have their little communities, and the local people are not considered. They throw up a big house somewhere, and the property taxes go way up, and now all of a sudden the local people cannot afford the property anymore. So now you may have someone coming from the United States, and remember, it's different there than in Portugal to some extent, because the difference is Billy Bob or Joe Bill or whatever his name is from Wyoming can look at a map and say, hey, the Virgin Islands, they have land for sale. I'll go on down there. He doesn't have to fill out it. He doesn't have to apply for a visa. He doesn't have to do any of that. He could just hop on a plane, land, meet a realtor, and just buy the property. That's it. Doesn't have to do anything else. So the Virgin Islands, we are autonomous to a certain level. We have a governor, but the federal laws of the United States overrides any of the local laws that are there. So it's not like the governor of the Virgin Islands can get up and say, hey, you know what? We're going to start limiting the amount of people who are coming in, or we're going to limit the amount of people who can buy land here, because we want to make sure that things stay somewhat stable for our local population, who are not making as much money as these people coming from the United States, or who may not have as much money as these people coming from the United States. Now, over in the British Virgin Islands next door, which are still under the British, crown, I guess you can say, they have different rules over there. And their rules is something called a belongers, forgot what it's called, meaning that if you're coming from England, just because these islands are still associated with England doesn't mean that you can come down and buy land tomorrow. I think you have to live on the island. If you come from somewhere else, I think you have to live on the island and contribute to the island for 20 years before you can even begin to talk about owning any property there. In the U.S. Virgin Islands, that's not the way it is. Bob Bill, Jim Thorpe, or whatever his name, whatever he is, can leave from California, can leave from Maine, Miami, New York, and just land in St. Thomas or St. Croix or St. John tomorrow and buy whatever property he feels like as long as it's available. So when these people come in, they're coming in, They're buying up the property, so they'll buy a swath of land, build some gigantic house with a big wall fortress around it. And now you may have a local person right next to them who's had a house in their family for generations. And all of a sudden, they're looking around and realizing their property tax of $100 a year or maybe $100 a month has now shot up to $1,000 a month because of this house that was built right next door. Now they can't afford it anymore. So now they have to more or less give up that land and move on. Another thing that happens is it has grown to the point, and the unfortunate thing is, and this is why it's so important about the type of people who are coming in to the country, in terms of what their motivations are. Sometimes it's not even motivations. Sometimes it's just tone deafness, just not being aware. So there is a particular country musician, and his name is Kenny Chesney. I think that's his name, Kenny Chesney. He discovers St. John. He goes down, finds it's a beautiful island, think he buys a property there, and when he does this, he would sing country songs and he would talk about how idyllic the islands are. It's like the usual beach bum, as we call it, the beach bum attitude. Come on down, man. Just drink on the beach and kick your feet up and just let it all wash away and just come on down and just enjoy these beautiful places. Well, he has his fan base. They start listening to his music. They're watching his life, seeing what he's doing, and it's like, wow, St. John, huh? Kenny Chesney's down there hanging out. Hey, let's go on down there, just hang out under some shacks, under some coconut trees. And, that image, and let's just sit on the beach and sip on rum and coke. And they started coming in. Now, you have to understand, Kenny Chesney is a country singer. So you do know that the base of his fans are likely into country music. And to some extension, country music is more associated with the southern part of the United States, and is in part of the United States that was home to slavery. All right, not that you didn't have it in the north, you had it up there also, but it pretty much endured down in the southern part of the United States. So there's still some overarching views, old views of race and old views of how you look at certain people of color that still permeates, that area of the country. So now you have these people coming down to the U.S. Virgin Islands, and they're looking at an overall majority black population. Tone deaf, not being aware. They come in and maybe not trying to learn about the place, not trying to learn about the local people, not trying to be maybe empathetic towards certain things, just going about their business. And before you know it, they started opening their own businesses and it's just them alone there. Or they start doing certain things that the locals would raise an eyebrow like, okay. And before you know it, you go to St. John. As a matter of fact, one of the complaints that you have is that people would look at a travel magazine from St. John, that some of these people who have come in now, who are promoting the island to other people, you will see them having a magazine. And in the magazine, it's getting a little cold in here. And in the magazine, you're looking around and you don't see any black people, or they're talking about the island and they're talking about it as if the island is basically populated by just white folks. Local population nowhere to be found, anywhere around. So when you show up on the island now, you're like, okay, I thought this is just going to be an island with just a bunch of white people, but I see a bunch of black folks. Where did they come from? Yeah, they've been living there all this time. So what has happened is that the local black population has kind of retreated, or just been kind of nudged to the side. It's like, hey, St. John is all about us white folks. And I'm not trying to make this a racist video. Just want you to understand what's going on here. So it's like, hey, here's St. John. Look at us. It's like, yeah, this is what St. John looks like, And again, the local black population who've always been there just sort of retreated. And now it's like, You barely know that they're there unless you go and visit the island. Now, this has caused some tension. So you hear the mumblings, you hear the grumblings of the local people. And it's a little difficult for me sometimes because I do know that there are white people who are there who mean well. I know they're not there to try to hurt anyone. They're not there to try to harm anyone. And some people would even go as far to be like, hey, you know what? I want to get my hands down and dirty. I'm not going to try to come down here and show up anyone or try to be like flaunting my wealth and show them what we have and whatever. You know, roll up their sleeves and it's like, hey, I want to be a part of the everyday like everyone else here. You know, I just want to fit in. I just want to learn the culture. I want to know what's going on. Some of these people have gone on to have children there, and their children are going to school with other local, well, I shouldn't say local children, but other kids, you know, of different colors. They go to school, the kids are growing up and marrying people of a different color and growing up and interacting and assimilating, talking like how I would talk if I'm speaking in my dialect, like, hey, what's going on, my son, you all right? You know, talking like that. You know, these are kids, curly hair, white, running around the place. So there are people like that. But then you have the other people coming in who are just tone deaf, not paying attention, not looking around and like, hey, how can I not come down here and be I couldn't use a word, an asshole. Like, for example, one thing I know is that in the Virgin Islands, culturally speaking, because of where our culture is, we don't really care for people walking around in their bathing suit in a supermarket, like a two-piece bathing suit. We don't really care for stuff like. Now, I don't mind. I don't care about that. But traditionally speaking, our society, being a little bit more conservative, would find that a little offensive. But you'd have these people coming down and they're walking around, and some of it, that in that case, it doesn't even matter color. But there are people walking around in the middle of town in a two-piece bathing suit, and they're looking around, like the local people, like, what's wrong with this person? Go put on some clothes. There are people showing up at the airport in two-piece bathing suits and sandals coming straight from the beach. And it's like, have some decency. I mean, that's just how our local people, especially our local older people, again, I don't mind, I don't care, but the people there will feel a certain particular way. So again, tone deaf, not being aware of where you are, not understanding what is accepted and what isn't. So now I've said all of that now, I bring it over to Portugal. So I look at these videos, and sometimes when I listen to the videos, take a listen to how they sound. They would say to you, if you come to Portugal, hey, you know, your dollar can go a long way, and you can this, and you can that, and you can this. When they're talking to, in my case, Americans, right? So they tell you, come on over there. Now remember, you're an American and you're working over there for an American company. You're probably making at least, at minimum, $20 an hour, US dollars. You're making $35 an hour, $75 an hour. You know, you're making quite a bit of money from your local American company or British company or whatever, and you're making quite a bit of money, but you're living in Portugal. So yes, you're ahead of the game. So when you're there and when you listen to these videos and they're talking to Americans, but the local Portuguese people are not making that much money on average. Okay? They're making $10 an hour, $9 an hour, something along that line. So they're not seeing the kind of money that you're seeing. So when you go there, off the bat, just how the way economics work. When you go there and you can afford to buy a $50,000 house that was $50,000, and someone looks around, maybe a local person says, hey, listen, you're an American, you're a British. $50,000 would have been the price for a local Portuguese. But you know what? I'm going to sell that for $150,000. Hey, no problem. That's cheap. Wow, $150,000 in California, that would have been $500,000. Let me go ahead and buy that. So when you go ahead and buy that for $150,000, next person down the street saw that you sold that house for $150,000. Hey, I'm going to sell mine for $175,000. So when you start doing that now, the local Portuguese who may have been looking at that house for $50,000 now can't afford it, because now the prices in that neighborhood have gone up $100,000. Now they can't afford it anymore. Or that could be the same case with an apartment. So over time, I worry sometimes because I don't want it to get to that point where a new group of people are coming in. And as they're coming in with their money and everything, they can afford to pay for those things if the prices go up. But the local population now is being hammered because they already were basically struggling, or maybe not even struggling, but they were just making just enough to make ends meet, and all of a sudden everything just raises up overnight. But their pay didn't go up to meet that inflation. And as a result, they're in a position now like, what are we going to do? We can't afford the place where we were born, where we grew up. We can't afford it anymore because a bunch of foreigners are coming in with money, and now the place has become unaffordable to us. Perfect example would be right here in South Florida where I am. When I left New York City, now I've lived in Florida, this is my second time, so I pretty much know the state very well, and I lived in New York 3 times. The conventional thinking for years had always been, you go to Florida to live a little bit better in terms of prices. Now, you know how it goes with economics. Florida, the average person in Florida, at least for years, were not making anywhere near the amount of money a person from New York was making, right? So the thinking was, if you didn't mind taking either a pay cut or coming down here and being an entrepreneur or something along that line, you would move to a place like Florida where the prices were at least lower. Now your money, how much money you were making, were going to probably go down also, and it was going to be kind of the same situation. So New York City, you're up there making $25 an hour. Florida, you're making $15, right? So you come down here, the prices are lower, but you're only making $15. But a person in New York who's making $25 comes down to Florida, and all of a sudden, that price of bread that a Floridian might be like, wow, that's expensive. New York is going to be like, wow, that's cheap. So after the pandemic happened, or while the pandemic was going on, a lot of people from New York who for years were like, I'm going to move to Florida, who never moved, the pandemic all of a sudden put fire under their feet. They decided, we're going to leave. We're going to come down here to Florida. Hey, we heard Florida has no state taxes, so we're going to move down to Florida. So me now, I come down in 2020. There's some homes behind where I currently live. There was a sign there when I first moved down, and they were building the homes, and the sign said, homes starting at $400,000. Do you know in the course of 2 years, the sign changed? Homes starting from $700,000. That tells you all that you need to know. But the local Floridian wouldn't be able to afford that $300,000 increase. But here comes New Yorkers. Here comes people from New Jersey where they make more money, selling their homes up there, making a bundle of money. They're selling their homes that they bought 20 years ago for, I don't know, $200,000. Homes are now going for $800,000, $900,000. And they're coming down to Florida and they're looking at homes for $400,000, $500,000. They've got the money. Local people, local landlords or landowners or homeowners or whatever will be like, wow, you're going to give me X amount for this? Okay, sure, I'll take that. So you know what's going to happen right there, right? Now the price of the homes are going to go up. So if me, now a Floridian coming in, or the local Floridian, were looking at a house down the street last week that was going for $250,000, they're like, wow, I'm having designs on buying that house over there. $250,000. Look at their wife, look at their kids. Hey, family, I think we can afford that house. I'm going to go take a shot at it. So while they're there planning, all of a sudden, the home is now $300,000. Like, when did that happen? Wow, what happened there? Well, hey, a New Yorker came down. Someone from New Jersey came down. Someone from Massachusetts came down and can afford to pay $300,000 for it. So now all of a sudden, it's like, hey, highest bidder. $300,000 you gonna give me for that house? Yeah, I think I'll take your contract instead. Another person comes down. Hey, I'll give you $350,000 for that. $350,000? Hey, I'll work with you. And the prices just shot up. And the local population here, who were never making as much money as the people up there, now realize they can't afford to buy those places. So now, similar type of thing over in Portugal. And the reason why I worry about things like this, here in the United States, it's one thing. In the Virgin Islands, it's a different thing. And Portugal is even a more different thing. Because if this goes unabated, and I've spoken to people over there in Portugal, people that I know who live in Madeira, and they're like, yeah, prices have gone up, from the 2 years that you were here, almost 2 years that you were here, well, year and a half that you were here. Prices have gone up in housing, and, things have gotten more expensive. That was expected because of what I just mentioned. So, sometimes the tone deafness will come through. I've heard some Americans like, what's the big deal? I've heard some Europeans from other people, what's the big deal? At least we're providing jobs by us showing up, the tourism and whatever. And they're right. But even though you're providing jobs and you're providing work because you're showing up and there are people going to serve you and so forth, their pay is not exactly going up to keep up with that inflation. Sure, got a little 50-cent raise, but 20 things in the store went up 20 cents. 20 cents is going to cover one item. What happened to the 50 that went up 50 cents? So that's one way of tone deafness, like sitting there like, what's the big deal? We're providing them jobs. What are they complaining about? That's one thing. The other thing is, when these things go unabated, you get people like a Donald Trump. You get people in other countries who jump on using immigrants or people coming in as the scapegoats. It's going to be like, well, hey, and you see, when you start flirting with that, you start flirting with the underbelly of a society, the people who are easily radicalized with hate. They emerge and they bubble to the top. Because you may have a leader who comes in who's a nationalist. And that could have different definitions. But the kind of nationalist I'm thinking about is like us first. Our people first. Not that that is necessarily bad. But usually when they do that, they have to do it by scapegoating other people. Right? They can't go ahead and just talk about the virtues of this. They've got to talk bad about this so that this over here can look better. Meaning, well, you see all these people who are coming in here. We need to stop them from coming in here because look at what they're doing. They're doing this, they're doing that, they're doing all these bad things. And they're going to highlight the bad things. Because what happened here, for example, in the United States, just giving you a perfect example, Republican convention back in 2016. At a Republican convention, a black man was trotted out on the stage. This was the night, I guess, Trump was going to speak and accept the nomination. He comes out on the stage, and what does he talk about? My son was killed by an illegal immigrant. And when he said it, it was like, see how bad these illegal immigrants are? They're here killing our people. Not to mention the fact that Americans kill each other far more than an immigrant coming in and doing that. Americans are killing each other every single day. So for every immigrant that may do something like that, 20 Americans would have killed each other in that same hour, somewhere across this country. But he came out. Now, of course, when he said killed, just notice the word that was used, killed. What really happened was, it was an illegal immigrant, yes, driving drunk, if I'm not mistaken, and he knocked over this young man and killed him. Okay? But it wasn't like, I'm going to go down the road and let me find somebody to run over, I'm going to kill him. It wasn't with intent. It was through negligence is how he ended up killing this young man. But the people who were listening, all they heard was killed. See, they're wicked. These illegal immigrants are coming in and they're doing so and so. That's the other way around, because a lot of times these immigrants who are coming in, they're poor, looking for a better life, and so on. So it's even easier to pounce on them. But now you have the other side, where you have people who are coming in, and these are people who may not be illegal. They're coming through the normal channels, but they're coming with money. They have money. They can do better. They can outbuy the local person. And when that happens, the prices then tend to start to increase. And as the prices start to increase, then pressure is added to the local population, the local economy, and everything there. So there are going to be some people who are going to benefit from this, mind you. You know, there are going to be some people going to make some serious money off of this. Understood? They're gonna be some, local, just everyday people who are gonna do very well from this. Restaurant owners, perhaps, homeowners who are willing to sell their homes and move somewhere else to another country. They're gonna do well for themselves. But the average, everyday person are gonna be priced out. Can't afford certain things. Now, should I blame the people who are coming in because they have the money to do stuff? I can't put the blame on them, squarely on them. They're gonna pay for whatever it's there and whatever the price is, to enjoy their lives themselves. You understand? And to build their lives there. But I'm just always fearful that somewhere along the line, someone comes to power or is running for power, and they come in and they start with, hey, look at what they're doing. Look at what they're doing over there. They're doing this, they're doing that. We need to run these people out. We need to stop them from coming in here. We need to this, we need to that. And start to create perhaps tension. Now you're walking down the street and all of a sudden you have someone who's been radicalized by this person's rhetoric, who's like, yeah, there's one of them over there. Let's go attack them. Let's go do this. Let's go intimidate them. Let's frighten them. And since I need to bring this video to an end, some of you may be aware of the fact that when I started doing these videos, and I think I've mentioned it to a few of you, down in the comments section, I think I did delete the comments, but I still have some of them saved. Down in the comments section. Now remember, I'm not a rich person. I'm going to go there and I probably can't afford a lot of things. You understand? So when I go there, I'm just going to be just like a regular everyday person also myself. But when I started doing the videos, there were people who came in the comment section. Now they claimed, or they gave the impression that they were Madeirans. And they were threatening me. They were telling me, don't come over here, because if you do, we're going to this, we're going to that. They were telling me things like, threatening me, telling me, hey, bad things happen to people like you. Now, I don't know if they were talking about my color. I don't know if they were talking about, this was just a message that they were sending to me, but it was really for my audience who were looking in. And they were telling me things like, I'm disrespecting Madeira by thinking about moving there. That made no sense to me. This is what they were telling me. Now, granted, these may have just been some young punks at home who had nothing else better to do, playing with themselves or something, and decided, hey, let's go in here and just cause some trouble. They could have also been serious people. They may not be anywhere in the majority, but you might have 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 here and get the right person. So they're like little matchsticks with a little thing at the top. And just get the right person to light that match on fire. And before you know it, there's 5 of them. Before you know it, there's 10 of them. Before you know it, there's 20 of them. And before you know it, people that you may have never thought were thinking these type of things become radicalized. Like, yeah, we don't want them in here. We don't want them around here. They need to get out of here. So I say all of that because it has to be cooperation between the local government, understanding their own people, and realizing that you don't want to let your own people be left behind, lost, and whatever, because your eyes are glued over here. Money, money, money. And Portugal is in a situation where it needs money. You understand? It was hit very hard with the recession. Okay, and it's not doing as well financially, or is on the financial standing of a place like France, just up above them, or Germany. So Portugal, Spain, and those places, somewhat languish when it comes to finances. So they have to go ahead and when they see money now, it's like, wow, this is a benefit. We need to get this money to build up our economies. So there's that fine line and that balancing act that goes on. Caring for your local people, not forgetting about them, and then watching people coming in and bringing money and putting it into your economy. How do you balance that out? That's a challenge that they have to work with right now, to prevent it from getting to the point where all of a sudden there's tension between the local population and the people who are coming in, and they start looking at each other with suspicion. And when those type of things start happening, and these people over here, the local people, start looking at these people over here and start looking at them in a particular way, from what history has shown you, then the people who are coming in, they start looking on like, what's their problem, and whatever, and they start pushing back, and before you know it, you have civil tension. Can that happen in Portugal? Who knows? History has shown that this is a common thing all over. Bunch of people coming in, putting a strain on things, The local people feeling they're being left out or being overlooked. Local people rise up, get angry. Some leader comes forward, expressing their sentiment. That leader becomes like a little folk hero. And before you know it, you have some radical person in there. And things just change a lot of times for the worse. So, things to consider, things to look into. And I guess if I'm speaking to other Americans like me, or other people going in, just be, I guess you can say, aware, self-aware. Don't be tone deaf. Be aware of the people who are there. Be aware of their cultural expectations, their traditions. Don't overstep them. Don't trash them. Don't trample all over them. Be aware when you go to a restaurant that these people are here working and they're not getting as much money as you are. Be generous in your giving. Making sure someone goes home very happy on that particular day. That sometimes, and I'm not making it sound like Portuguese people are like out there begging and needing your money, and it's like, oh, please give me an extra $5. I'm not saying that, but you have to understand, and when you go there, you're not going to see, poverty all over the place. That's not what I'm saying at all. You understand? People are still doing pretty well in terms of the quality of life, but you have to consider, if you're going to be out there and doing certain things, just consider the people's feelings. And overall, consider the fact that you might be making your $50 an hour, $70 an hour. The average Portuguese is not making that. Well, not even the average American, So you just have to just consider those type of things, that you're just not tone deaf to their feelings and whatever is going on with them, okay? Anyway, let me bring this video to an end. I probably didn't end it the best way because I'm probably saying some things that's going to be somewhat controversial, but I got to rush back in here. So you guys can have it in the comment section. But I just figured I'll just go ahead and put this over. So I guess I was speaking more on both sides of the fence, so to speak, and just trying to bring up something here just to try to see if we can nip it in the bud before it gets to that point, okay? All right, you guys take care. Until the next video from Matt About Madeira, thank you for your time and thank you for watching.